So today we'll take a look at a few ways we can use a matrix mixer. There are quite a few mixers in VCV, so we'll take a look at a few of them. And let's quickly look at what is a matrix mixer. So here I have the one from Count Modular. You can see we have 4 inputs and then 4 outputs, and I have 4 LFOs connected to the inputs, and the outputs go to 2 different scopes, right? So now I can route them and send them to different outputs. So for example, if I want to send LFO1 to output 3, right, LFO1 will go on this row, and then output 3 will come out of here. So all I have to do is turn this knob here, and then LFO1 will come out of output 3, and like this I can route and mix the different LFOs, right? So now we have 1, and we have 3 and a bit of 4, all going to output 3. Right, the same, for example, with output 1, right? This will come out of here, and then output 2, right? So we have not this one, we have 1, 2, and 3, all coming out of output 2, right? So like this, we can route and mix signals throughout the outputs. And the first thing we can try is really create complex modulation sources and route them throughout the patch. So here I have a bass drone, the VCO unit going through some chorus, and the filter Gravy is a stereo filter from Sapphire, and the delay, right? It will sound like this. Just a simple drone. And I have here also 4 different sources of modulation using here the quad LFO. So there is random, smooth random, a sine wave, a triangle wave, and stepped random, right? So again, I have 4 versions of a modulation source. I'm using here the Bog Audio Matrix Mixer to create different mixes of these signals, right? And this will eventually modulate the filter of this drone. So for example, I can send some of the triangle wave to output A, which goes to the filter, right? This will go to the filter. The triangle wave is wave number 3, right? So if I bring in 3A, you can see this on the scope also. Right now the triangle wave goes to the filter. And then I can mix in, for example, some of the stepped random. This is signal number 4, so 4A will go out to the filter. Right, so we have something a bit more complex. Right, now we can create even more variations. I have here a sequence with slips, sequencing an FM operator. Right, and now I can mix here with the same matrix mixer. I can mix another variation. So for example, I can use the smooth random voltage. In this case, it will go from output B. So 1B will be smooth random, right? Smooth random going to output B. Right, and then add maybe the sine wave, which is the second wave here. And then again, a bit of stepped random. Right, and if you look here at the scope, this is the wave that we are getting, right, with 3 different modulation sources. By the way, there is even a bigger version here of the matrix mixer with 8 channels, and they also have an expander. Right, so here I have another voice here. I have the XCO going through a filter, and you can see I have here the matrix with the 4 channels and its expander, and this expander will allow us to mute, solo, and also control with CV the levels of the different inputs. Right, so if I unmute this, for example, I have here the ADDR sequencer as 1 signal and 2 LFOs, right, creating different modulation sources. So again, I can, for example, mute the inputs. Right-clicking, I can solo them. Right, and we have CV inputs here that we can use to control the signals. I have here an LFO, so for example, I can control this signal here, the input, which will be this CV input. Right, so we get a bit more variation. It's also possible to create interesting sequences. So here, for example, I have 3 different sequences. One has 7 steps, one has 8 steps, one has 5 steps. Each is running with its own clock division or clock rate. And I'm using, in this case, the matrix mixer from Count Modula. The first voice will be, or the first 2 voices will be 2 VCO units. Right, and now I can create different mixes of these sequences. So for the first one, for example, for channel 1, I will mix in the first and the second sequence. Right, and for the other VCO unit, maybe the second and the third. Here I have also the FM2 VCO from Surge XT. Right, and in this case, I will go with the first and the third sequences. And I also have here the classic VCO, also Surge XT, going through a filter. And then what I will do, I will use the first one, the first sequence, right, but maybe the second sequence inverted. So if I open this to the left, it will invert the second sequence. Right, so again, we have 4 different mixes of the 3 sequences, creating 4 unique sequences to 4 different voices. This can work also nicely with a sequential switch. So in this case, I have the wavetable VCO. And here I have, let me solo this for a second, here I have slips, and it's going to all 4 inputs, the same sequence, to all 4 inputs of the matrix mixer, and I just have different levels set. Right, so this will be output 1, output 2, output 3, and output 4. Right, they have different levels, so I have different variations of the same sequence, right, different mixes of the 4 duplicates of this sequence, right, and then I can use a sequential switch, a 4 to 1, to chain those 4 variations. Right, so I have 1, 2, 3, and 4. Right, so I have 4 different versions with the help of the matrix mixer. Another fun thing to try is mixing and routing audio throughout your patch. So here I'm using the 4MS VCA matrix. It's of course also available as a hardware module, and it has built-in VCAs, as you can see here, right? So we can bring voices in and out with modulation. I have 3 different voices. I have here the VCO unit going up and down in octave. So this will be, this will be channel 1. Then I have an FM voice, percussive FM voice with 2 FM operators. This is channel 2 on the matrix mixer here. And then I have the FM2 VCO sequenced by slips. This will be the 3rd signal. Right, so now they are all mixed and going out from output 1. But I can also route them through different processing. So for example, I can send output 2 to go to a delay, right? I have the delay from Surge XT. I have it set to 100% wet. Again, we already have the dry signal from output 1. So this is a parallel processing, right? A sort of a send effect, if you will. And now I can mix in the second signal and the third. And they will go now through the delay, as you can hear. I can also bring in the first sound here, but then control it with a random voltage. So you can see we have here 4 inputs. This corresponds to the 4 first channels, and then 4 more inputs that will correspond to these channels. So this input here, the first input, will be the first signal, which is in this case the VCO unit. So now I control its amplitude with random voltage. Right, so we have also amplitude modulation, and I have here also Nimbus, which is a cloud's clone. In this case, it will granulize the incoming signal. So this can be in output 3, right? And again, I can mix, for example, the second and the third. Right, it's also tuned an octave up here on the pitch control. And again, I can control the amplitude. In this case, these 4 knobs will correspond to these 4 inputs. Right, so I can control their amplitude again externally with voltage through the VCAs. Right, so we have something much more complex with more layers. And of course, this can work also nicely for creating complex waveforms. Right, here I have 4 VCO units. And I'm using in this case the matrix mixer from Doc B. It has also CV inputs, right? So also here we can have amplitude modulation. We can control the amplitude with voltage, with external voltage, right? And I'm using the VCO units as pairs. So I have here left and right, and then another pair to left and right with 2 different filters, a low pass filter and a band pass filter. Right? Again, mixing them, creating much more complex results. Matrix mixers also allow us to create interesting feedback loops. So here I have, for example, a simple sequence with slips sequencing the VCO unit. This is going to input A of the matrix mixer, and the output, the main output, will come out of output 1. So A1 will send this sequence to the output. And I also have here the VCV delay. So first of all, I can send this sequence also to the delay, again as a sort of a send effect. The delay is on channel 2, right? So if I open A2, it will send the sequence to the delay. Again, the delay is fully wet, so it's a sort of a send effect, and I can send this back to the mix. Again, it's channel 2 or channel B in this case, and the mix is output 1. Right, so now we get also the delay. And I can add also feedback by sending the delay back into itself. So if I open B2, right, the delay will go back into itself, creating a feedback loop. Right, so now we have also feedback control. Right, but we can also process the delay first and then feed it back into the delay. So I have here some saturation with tones. Right, I will send the delay first to the saturation. So the delay again is channel B, the saturation is channel 3 in this case. So it will be this control here. And then the saturation back to the delay. Right, so saturation back to the delay channel. Right, so this will add feedback processed by tones. Right? Can change the tone a bit, add even more drive. Right, so now we're processing the feedback or the delayed signal through tones, sending it back into the delay. Now I can also send this after tones, after the saturation, to another module. Here I have again Nimbus. Right, so C4 will send the saturation to the 4th channel, which is Nimbus. Also here I have it set an octave up, so we will get something like a shimmer effect. It will just keep on going up in octaves. And again, also this we will send back to the delay. So this is Nimbus and the delay again is channel 2. Right, I can add also the original feedback. And we get something like a shimmer effect. And this can work great also with feedback modulation. So here again I have 4 VCO units. Right, we will eventually listen to just one of them, but all 4 of them are going to the matrix mixer I have here from Boga Audio again. Right, and from the matrix mixer they are routed to the phase modulation inputs. Right, and then with the levels I can just route them. If I take this down for a second, right, I can just route them, let me unmute this, route them and modulate each other. Right, and create complex modulation routings. Right, basically using them as a modulation source, as an audio rate modulation source, routing them and mixing them in different ways and feedback modulating things in different ways with the matrix mixer. So as you can see, there's a lot to experiment when it comes to matrix mixers. I have here another voice, but for now, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Cheers.